that, if you're directly involved in this one way or another, that you're loved and we care about you.
We got, people that want to help.
Okay, well, happy to see all of your faces. Today, basically, what I want to do is just have a conversation about the Holy Land, Israel and Palestine, our hot topics, or a hot topic, however you want to frame it, in world events today, and especially the media and the way we speak about world events. And I think one thing that gets lost in the conversation is, the local and also the Christian experience in this whole matter. And Christians in different parts of the world tend to have different leanings based on how the conversation is steered or engineered in their part of the world. So I'm just going to ask you guys to go ahead and introduce yourself and your connection to the Holy Land before we get started. Let me start with you, Abuna. And by the way, for those only listening and can't see, the priest, with us today, when I say the word Abuna, I'm basically saying father, technically our father, but this is the word we use in, it's actually an Aramaic word, but it's the word we use in Arabic for father or priest. When we address priest, we'll say Abuna. And so this is Abuna George. Abuna George, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Shalom, everyone. Thank you for this beautiful discussion about the situation that's going on. I'm really honored to be with you. I am Father George Basus. Abuna, I was born in Jerusalem. I'm from Bethlehem. I raised in Bethlehem and Jerusalem both ways. And then I was ordained as a priest in Jerusalem to serve Jerusalem, Ramallah, Jericho, and the other areas. And after 2 years, I came to Canada to serve. I'm so blessed to have this church, to be a part of this church, because this church loves history so much, and history bring us so much memories, good and bad, and how we lived and struggled with it, and how we reflect Jesus in that situations. Now, my family, actually, my own family came from Turkey 100 years ago, when they were visiting the Holy Lands, and one time, and they sent them. Please don't come to Turkey anymore. They start a genocide and stay there. And from that time, my family splitted between Iraq, Syria, and Holy Lands. I like to call it Holy Lands, or Palestine nowadays. Because me personally, I was born in Jerusalem, but I have a Palestinian identity. Even now, Jerusalem, the part I was born, is Israeli one. We struggled so much in that land. My family were so blessed to be in the same land that Jesus lived, that Jesus raised, Jesus was born, Jesus was crucified, was buried and resurrected and ascended. It was so blessing, even to be ordained as priest there after a long time that any other merit priest were ordained there. I was the 76 years after the last one was ordained as a merit priest in Jerusalem. It was a big blessing. My family, actually, some of them, they traveled back in the 48 and 67 as the Israeli government start attacking our peoples in Jerusalem, and then they flee, and we lost so much. They say thousands of families in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and they flee around the world. And then we lost calling Syriac court or Syriac area in Jerusalem, by Muslim and Jewish quarter there, because Jerusalem is four parts.
Right.
Yeah, one part is was most of our people there. Now this is like the shortened way I could say that we lived for 100 years more there, and now we spread around the world. Yeah, thanks the Lord.
Thank you, Abuna. And, for those listening, when he said this church, he's referring to the Syriac Orthodox Church. So we all happen to be members of that church, for those listening. And, if there's any inside references, I'll do my best to, explain sort of what it is to the general crowd. Let me go to you, Joseph. Joseph, would you just briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll start where you left off. So I'm a deacon in the church. And I think that kind of takes me to how I was born. My parents met in the church here in the U.S., but they both come from the Holy Land, from Bethlehem and from Jerusalem. If not them, then their parents. And so we still have a tie to the region. We still have family there. Abuna George knows my family, and we just found out that we're related, like fifth cousins. So we still. I was born in the U.S. My family's been in the U.S. for 50 years, but we still are tied to the land there because we have relatives there, but because we feel like it's ours, in the sense that it's the land for the Christians. Or Jerusalem is the epicenter of our faith. And so for me, we have that relationship, but in a lot of ways, it feels like at an arm's length distance, because having been in America for so long.
Thank you. And the running joke is, you get strangers together from the community, and between 5 and 15 minutes, you'll find out how you're related. And so there's even a possibility we found out that maybe Abuna George and I are like 20th cousins or something. Half joking. Shamosho Daniel Kakesh has been on this. Yeah, definitely through Adam. Like let's go back, all the way. And those of you who've seen or listened to some of my other podcasts, you'll know Subdeacon Daniel Kakesh. Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to the crowd who may be tuning in for the first time?
Thank you, Malfano. Thank you guys for letting me be on this with you. I have a master's degree in history in the modern Middle East, so maybe I can help in that category. I was born in the U.S. My father is a native Jordanian East Banker, and my mother is Iraqi. I think, Abuna, tell me if I'm wrong. You have a relative who's married to Qaqishia or something like that, right? Yeah.
Your cousin is my cousin.
We're in-laws, so there you go.
There's a potential family tree.
Joseph the same. Deacon Joseph have two relatives for him that marry my two cousins too.
Oh wow! Okay.
So you are the nexus point, Abuna, but that connects all three of us.
My dad. So when he was growing up, my dad was born in 1952. So the West Bank was annexed to Jordan at the time, until 1967. So my dad had gone, even though he's an East Bank Jordanian, native Jordanian, he went to boarding school in the West Bank, in Bet Jala. He went to boarding school there, which is right next to Bethlehem, I think. So I have my uncle. My uncle used to live in the West Bank, and my dad was in Jordan in Black September, and there's a lot of the history that happened. So maybe I can have some insight on this.
I think the insight that I'm kind of interested in is are the untold stories or the untold narratives that don't get pushed by mainstream media in any country, right? And our conversation may aggravate a lot of people because our perspective may not be accounted for in what people are used to. And so I'm just looking for, how do people, especially Christians in the West, who largely don't know Eastern Christians, and they only learn about this situation from what they can gather through the media. What's it like for folks on the ground who are from the region, who have people in the region who've lived it, who may have an alternative perspective, especially now we're all in the West, whether you grew up in the Holy Land or you grew up out here. I mean, we obviously have, loads of Palestinian friends, but we also probably have a lot of Israeli friends too. And I'm not just talking about Jewish friends, right? But people who would be citizens of Israel, and there's even communities, like there's an Assyrian Jewish community now that, has arisen in recent years, or at least they've kind of started gathering around their heritage and identity. So there's an Assyrian Jewish community, in the region, in Jerusalem and the Holy Land, and they're Israeli citizens, and they're connected to the community in different ways. And everyone, we know people who, most folks may not know one or the other, or they may know one really well, and not the other very well, or they may caricaturize someone. So for you guys, what's it like being, I don't want to call it a third party, but what's it like, witnessing what happened, the way that Israel and Palestine are spoken of in the media versus your own experiences?
Actually, I will start because I like to hear everyone, but there's many things to say. And for sure, there is one thing there that there is, like, I remember myself, like before 97, 98, when we used to live together, many Jewish, many Muslims, and us. We love everyone, as Christians, we respect everyone, but we don't agree on many things in faith. But the thing is, as a society, we used to live together. Our grandparents, they were telling us we sell things together, we like everything. We share only faith now. We were even talking about it. They were visiting us in our feasts and the Christmas, Easter, even rabbis, Jewish rabbis, Muslims, imam, many people, they were visiting us. We visit them. They were living in peace until later the Israeli government, they put a law that any Jewish person has the Israeli citizen comes to a Palestinian area, they will have a court for him. Maybe they will postpone their citizen also. And then the peace movement start to decrease. Myself, I didn't, when I was a deacon since I was 5 years old. I was going to Jerusalem when I was 13 years old. My family, they accepted me to go to the monastery and live there. And our monastery is so close to the Jewish court. We're the same wall. Our neighbors are Jewish. The other wall of the monastery is a mosque. Here are Muslims and here's Jewish. We didn't use to see somebody hit us or spit on us at that time. But later when I grow 18, 19 years old, I start facing, sometimes hitting, sometimes throwing paint on us, spitting, curses. And as a joke, I went to the Talmud and I read about it, how they deal with Christians, because they see us as religious leaders. They see us as a curse. They can't say shalom to us or hello. And I say, when I see people, a bunch of Jewish people coming, the religious one, they start coming to spit on me or say bad words. I go say before, shalom, manishma beseder, how are you, dears, peace. And when they see that priest saying hi to us, they become scared to be cursed and they run away. And I saved myself that day. But the thing is, there's good people in the two religious. They were good with us until politics involved, which happening nowadays. Many innocent people are dying because of that. My point is here that we face both ways, but people, they need to decide how to live with each other. This is the situation. It's hard, but you need to stand for truth. until everyone hears about it.
It's kind of a metaphor for the whole world right now, right? Like we need to figure out how to just be with each other,
Yeah.
and let that be okay.
They need Jesus for sure. Yeah.
So I was born in the U.S. And my parents, both my parents, didn't grow up in where their parents grew up, namely in Jerusalem or Bethlehem. And so my closest experience are stories, and stories from my grandparents mainly, but also stories from my parents when they would visit, or their relatives that still live in the region. And I recall my grandfather particularly telling me stories. And so he grew up, or he was born in the 20s. So this is British Mandate Palestine. And then through all of the conflicts up until the 50s, about when they left the region. And he would always tell me like that there was a large Christian presence, but there was a large desire for Christians to come to the region. That there was this hope, or there's this vision that Christians, we always hear, just on a slight tangent, we always hear, or used to hear, that all of the Christians were to gather in Lebanon, and Lebanon was going to be like the Christian country in the Middle East. But from what my grandfather would tell me is that also was the hope in the Holy Lands. So in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem, as Abuna had mentioned, our families, my family included, left the Upper Mesopotamia during the what we call Safo, or Armenian genocide, during 1915's World War I, and migrated as refugees basically all over. We had communities in Jerusalem and Bethlehem before. We had communities in the Levant area in aggregate before all of this. But due to persecution, they migrated to safer areas. And when they arrived, they really felt like this was home to them. That they were kind of returning back home, because there had always been this pilgrimage back and forth. And so there was always this hope or vision that this would be a place, a safe haven place, a place of multiple religions, like Abuna had mentioned, but with tolerance between the religions, where they could kind of live peacefully. And unfortunately, their experience has been kind of less and less tolerance, or maybe even allowance, if I can say that, politically speaking, etc., to the Christians in the region, until you have to make a difficult choice. Like, do you want to stay and then be isolated, or allocated to one group or another, and perhaps that group doesn't even fully accept you? I've heard plenty of stories and experienced personally myself, even growing up in the U.S., amongst Palestinians who are not Christian, and they will deny you this label or this nationality of being Palestinian because you don't conform to their kind of this standard national identity because of your faith. And so it's kind of like lose, 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 lose throughout history. And so I don't know. It's not a positive, like Abuna was talking about, since like 97 or 99 or something like that. And for sure, there was periods of peace and cooperation, and certainly the early 90s, you saw pushes for peace in the region. But I think that there's a larger story where loss of access to properties, or to certain neighborhoods, or to certain streets, or whatever. And that's not a new phenomenon. Like, that's always been the case from my understanding. And so being in the US and then kind of seeing it on television play out, seeing it play out in like news reports, it kind of hits close to home, because that's where my family comes from. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's completely a different, it's like a different world to me, because I haven't lived it like Abuna's lived it. I haven't witnessed it or felt it or experienced it, unfortunately, like Abuna's witnessed it. I see some of it here play out between the expats that live now here in the U.S. Yeah, I don't know. It's a sad and unfortunate history of a place that is home to multiple religions. Supposedly should be a place of peace, and there just hasn't been peace there in a very long time. And I think that's where the Christian identity or the Christian mission could kind of fill in and bring about a peaceful solution. At least that's our hope.
Prophet Jeremiah, shalom, shalom, ba'ain shalom, right? That peace, peace, but there is no peace. Right?
There's no peace. Yeah, as Shamosh mentioned, Malfono, that this area was in so many times wars, persecution, especially for our people.
Yeah.
Before we're talking about Israel and Palestine now conflict, like let's say as Syriacs, and then 1536, we have been killed there also. We had genocide, especially in Jerusalem, from Ottomans.
Yeah.
Look, 5 centuries ago, and we used to have in Gaza itself, we used to have a cathedral, San Severius and San Zechariah. They were living there for some time. Also later in Tiberias lakes around it, we used to have many archbishops. But like genocides happens, that they clear the whole people. We were the people of that whole area, and now look, we are minorities.
Right.
This is what's happening actually nowadays. Like we don't, like, as you mentioned, there's no peace because Jesus is the peace, and they need Jesus. Without him, they can't survive. We can't go with one group and the other because there is no justice there. Even God in Isaiah, he tells them that if you don't be justified, like you don't rule in justice, I can call you my people. Even there's conditional covenant between God and the people. They need to live in just. Nowadays, what's happening? I don't feel. I could see that there is no peace because of the actions of the people, their decisions. Yeah.
I want whoever is going to watch this, I want them to realize that when Abuna or Shamosh or Joseph are saying that they have origins in Mesopotamia, it does not disqualify our presence in the Levant also, whether it's Jerusalem or Damascus or Beirut or any of these areas, because and I think, Abuna, tell me if I'm wrong, you have origins in Tikrit also, right?
Yeah, this is 8 centuries ago, and before we were in Jerusalem. It's as Christians we were many times persecuted.
Yeah,
we
sure.
were just fleeing from area to another area.
Yeah, the Semitic Christians, the Aramaic speaking Christians, our home is the whole Fertile Crescent. The whole Fertile Crescent is our home, and I would even say Arabia too. So for us to be there, like Abuna said, in Palestine, Palestine in the 5th century was a bastion of non-Chalcedonian orthodoxy, of the Syriac Orthodox Church. It was a fortress for it. And then in the 6th century, due to Roman persecution of Justin and Justinian, it was flipped to the Chalcedonian side. But we were there on and off. If we're not there natively because of the people being from Mesopotamia, it's due to persecution that we're not there natively. And that's true for the whole Levant. I think it's just Homs now that has a native Syriac Orthodox community that isn't from Mesopotamia, if I remember correctly. So now, what is closer in proximity? A Semitic Christian, an Aramaic speaking Christian from Mesopotamia, or a Russian or German or English or Polish person from I don't know where. because if we are only looking at the religion, I don't know if converting to one religion or another gives you rights to a land, because a religion is a choice. You convert to the religion. So if I convert to Judaism, I can go and take the Israeli passport, yeah? But and so if somebody from Antarctica does that, he has the right to a Semitic land versus the Semite himself, who's from the Fertile Crescent, and he does not feel like that can be his home anymore. So this is the question I think the viewer should be thinking about.
Yeah, you're right, Shamosho. If you read history, like everyone could see us, you could see that originally the area was for us, but now for what Shamosho is asking for the current situation, if you look, and this is for the Westerns too, especially, like, because we always connect the Bible, the prophecies that happened in the Old Testament, with the modern Israel state, which totally we don't agree with that. There is no prophecies that happened in the Old Testament in the Bible that tells us that that these are the same people that were in the Old Testament, they are now. Okay, even there have some minorities still remain the same with both sides. Because if you look at the English definition, nowadays you call Israelis. The old one, Israelites. And the same with Palestinians nowadays. The old one is Philistines. Okay, and the Philistines, they came from Greece before, and then they went to the Gaza shores. And later the Israelites came with Abraham, and later from Egypt with Moses, like when Moses, like they entered with Joshua. We're not talking about history of the Bible now. But what I'm trying to say, that there's people on that land now. You can't cast them out and live and take the right to tell that this is the land of God, because God himself, even he gave it to the Old Testament people, and he told them, this is your kingdom where you live. But the point where that the fulfillment where of the prophecies is when Jesus comes to become a spiritual kingdom, and he was the center, the point. And when some people, they didn't accept, especially from Jewish and later Muslims, that had the conflict that there is no peace anymore. Everyone looks what I want from that land. I don't care about the others. And this is what's happening nowadays. If you could see that Christians, they always try to talk about peace. Let us live together. Let's do two states. This country is for everyone. You can't kill somebody to live. This is killing. This is not a kind of good life. And this is what's happening. We don't take a side, and we don't say that we're with the Israeli people, because many of Israeli people nowadays, they don't believe even. And the other side, the Islam, when they have this like whole war as with Hamas, and they fighting, they killing, both are killing innocent people. They start the flame, the fire, and they disappear. And who's taking it? The Christians and the innocent people from both sides. This is what is sad, that they can't live together. They don't want, which is the big conflict. Everyone that want to show the big image that we're the good people, we don't kill people, we love everyone. But both sides, okay, they look at the history. Even Palestinians, as history, as Philistines, they didn't have the history that they owned the land. But later, when happened the year 70 after Christ, when the one of the commanders, that the Roman commanders, they cast all the Jewish people out, the people came. People lived on the same place of the Jewish that time. But even Jewish people nowadays, they don't agree. If you go YouTube and search for Jewish rabbis about this Palestinian conflict, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they don't agree. They don't like this state. They say, we live in the country we are in. We love the country we are in. We don't want an Israel state. There is nothing as about faith or Jewish religion, which they have the right to live there and everyone is out, or you kill, or just like, this is ours, we do what we want to take it back. This is nothing. There is a big mix between faith and religion and what's going on. And many people I served, even my neighbors around me, they talk with me about that. They don't know. When I tell them the stories, they are sad. They tell, we don't know this, because they just hear from the media. We need to dig more, to search history, religion, even prophecies. We need to understand when they were prophesied, why they were, and when were fulfilled. And this helps us to understand the situation nowadays.
One of the things that I think gets lost in the midst of all this, and you alluded to it earlier, especially with that change, when you're talking about everybody kind of working together, in the different shops and the bazaars and things, and then time went by, and then a different attitude happened. And like the Israelis I know are very cool. They're people I really like. I enjoy speaking Hebrew. I've learned modern Hebrew in addition to the classical, and they're great interlocutors. They're great people to have conversations with. And the thing is, there are so many different types, whether it's Palestinians, look, you heard Shemosha Daniel already talk about the East Bankers versus West Bankers. No one really talks like that, except for, that's like an internal conversation. Who are you? What's an East Banker, right? Like, we're lucky if we even hear the word West Bank these days, But look, the West Bank is different than Gaza, and there's different political groups and different religious movements. Yeah, of course, there's something of the same, but like you said, there's also a lot of differences within the Jewish community. There are, people who believe that Jews are still a people of exile, and there's others that believe that it's their time to return. And there's different, you can call them denominations, movements, whatever. But, what strikes me as you're talking is that, like, is there a value apart from the people who live there? Because the people, wherever people live, people make the land the value, because the value is the life, and the people, everyone is created in the image and likeness of God. That's why something's valuable, because of the people. But apart from the people, if there's no religious kind of history to the region, like, is there a value to it? Like, is there a reason to go live there? Is there a lot of oil? Is there, is there a lot of grain and water, or like wonderful natural resources? Does it have gold mines? Like, are there commodities? Is the weather excellent? Well, the weather's probably, one of the better things, right? But like, what's the value there? Between the presence of religion and the denominations, you get this really complicated soup that doesn't come across to us today. Today, we're given team A and team B. And there's not a lot of room for nuance. There's not a lot of room for the conversations of the rabbis who, are like pro-Palestinian. There's not a lot of conversation for Arabs who serve in the Israeli police and military, because there are Arab people, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, or Christian, or Druzi, like, they're there and they're part of the Israeli government, and people have to live somewhere, and they have to survive somehow, and they have to have neighbors, that they can live with, right? And so I'm struck by the absence, if we can call it that, of the sophistication in the way we talk about this publicly, because it's not A versus B. It's really like, it's a bunch of different peoples there together. Shemosha Daniel and I were watching this Saudi guy the other day. He's talking about like you yourselves, whose families moved there 100 years ago, right? Like, for all, like, your families were there before most of the people made Aliyah. For those listening, that's the process of Jewish people coming to live in the Holy Land in the state of Israel to take Israeli citizenship. The verb is to make Aliyah, which means to ascend, right? To go up, basically. But your family was there before that became a process, before, the modern Zionist movements happened and things like that. There's people there who are like that, over the last several centuries, right? Like a lot of this is happening in the Ottoman period. And, in that video, Shamosha, I don't know if you want to reference it, but like, the Saudi guy was, saying, "Anta mint Arabi, anta mint Arabi," right? Like, you're not Arabic, right? Like he's talking to all these different groups, like, who are you? It really begs the question, because there's so many people there who, in a way, whatever happened in the 40s, it matters because of the wake it left, because of the echo that it left. But what ultimately matters is today, right? Like the people who are there today. You're a human being, you're alive, you're created in the image and likeness of God, whether your name is Muhammad or Herschel, like, Moses, it doesn't matter, right? Like you're created in the image and likeness of God, What was he saying, Shamosho?
Am I muted? Hold on. No, I'm good. So he was saying Palestinian بقايا الشعوب. They are the remnants of the peoples. They're just randoms of like gypsies and Circassians and Chechens and all the Mongolians and like
Armenians.
yeah,
leftovers.
There's just a bunch of random minorities of people there, and you guys are not Arabs. So in his mind, he's a tribal Arab from Arabia.
Could you just, elaborate on that for a minute or so?
Yeah.
Like the difference between like people who speak Arabic from the Middle East versus Arabs, like
Sure.
real Arabs.
So an Arab, like right now, we're speaking in English, all of us. But are all of us Englishmen? I don't think so. So just because someone speaks a language, it doesn't mean he's the ethnicity of that language. So Palestinians and most Levantine people and most Levantine people are Arabized. All of North Africa is Arabized. They're not Arabs. Arabs are from Arabia, from the Arabian Peninsula. Those are
just to be sure, like he's not saying that derogatorily. It's the same way that most of us in the West are anglicized, right? Like if you're in the US, Canada, Australia, your family probably doesn't come from jolly old England. It might, but we're speaking English, right? And so we're in an Anglic, sort of a post-Anglic culture or something like that.
Right. And unless you are in these territories, like in Palestine, Morocco, Syria, wherever, and you have tribal Arabian heritage, that exists, but it's a minority of these areas. It's not the majority of the people. So what the Saudi guy is saying, and I think he's a famous personality, Rawaf something, I forgot his last name. He said he's coming at it from that context. Like, you guys are not Arabs. We don't know you. He's disowning them, and he's saying the Jews are the sons of Isaac. We're the sons of Ishmael. We're cousins. أولاد عم. انتوش دخلكم. What involved you guys between cousins? That's what he's saying. But again, he's coming at it, if we're being consistent, which I like to be consistent. I don't know if he's being consistent or not. I have to ask him. But if he's being consistent, then he needs to make a distinction between the Jews in general, meaning anyone who subscribes to the Jewish religion, or the ethnic Hebrews, which are, say, the Mizrahi Jews, the Jews of Mesopotamia, of Iran, of the Levant, these areas, because those Jews have been there, I think, since Nebuchadnezzar and Sargon dispersed them, and then they kind of just stayed in Mesopotamia and Iran. And then also, and there was a period of time, Baghdad was like majority Jewish or something. And the Jews in Yemen, the Jews in Arabia. So if he's thinking about Jews, that kind of Jews, okay. But if he's thinking about just the religion, the Jewish religion, that's like saying all the Muslims and all the Jews are cousins, then that defeats his argument, because he just said the Palestinians are not included, but they're Muslim, right? So, and I want to say too about Israeli citizens who are not Jewish, and the state that exists. I think everyone can agree, even Israelis, I think, would agree that the idea of the state of Israel is a romanticist idea. Aliyah was happening because of romanticism, to kind of go back to the promised land and whatever. So, and I would agree that the religious Jews, the very Orthodox ones, they're not fans of the government because they want Sharia. they want the law of Moses, and they want a king, and they want the Sanhedrin. They want that back, and that's not what the state of Israel is. Speaking to some of them, they've told me this is a parody of what we should have. It's like they feel offended that the government is not that. And the problem with the non-Jewish citizenry of Israel, it prevents. So, like right now, the ideal of Israel is not complete, because Judea and Samaria, Judea especially, that's an integral part of the whole thing. Like that's the most important part of Jews are from Judea, right? So, and Judea is occupied; it's not annexed. Why isn't it annexed? Why aren't Samaria and Judea not annexed? Because if you annex them, you have to give all the people citizenship. And you can't give them citizenship, because if you give them citizenship, they become a bigger number of a democratic state. So in order to keep a democracy, you can't give them citizenship, because then it's not a Jewish state anymore. Unless you change the form of government to this monarchical Shariat Allah kind of state, then you could do it, because it's not a democracy anymore. Who cares if you give them citizenship? But yeah, these are my thoughts.
Do you think that, one of the reasons why Westerners, and look, obviously the obvious answer is political alliances, right? Between the West and Israel. But apart from whatever's happening politically, do you think one of the reasons why Westerners will have their default reaction as taking Team A as Israel or whatever, the ones you cheer for, Manchester, right? They don't want Barcelona, they want Manchester. So they're going to cheer. Is it in part because structurally it's more like a Western style of government? It's genetically like, and look, even European Jews have Middle Eastern heritage. It's not as though, they're entirely Polish or Russians or British, but they look very European. If they're from Morocco, they look very Moroccan. If they're from, Algeria,
I didn't know.
Yemen,
yeah, I didn't know that.
they look Arab. I mean, you go to Hollywood, and a lot of the Arab actors are like, they're Yemeni Jews. Like they live in Beverly Hills, and so they're available. They speak Arabic. They're Arabs who are Jews, right? Like, and so we don't tend to see the Mizrahi side of the Israeli experience so much in the West. We kind of see the side that looks like us, or the side that looks like Westerners, right? And so what role does that play? Like, whether it's the structure, not necessarily the political alliances, but just because I myself don't know much about the way that the pre-Israel communities were structured in terms of their local governance, because like I can go back basically before the Ottoman period and I have a better idea. But then, once the Turks take over, it's the Ottoman period, it's kind of chill for a couple centuries and whatnot. Once it's the Ottoman period, things are relaxed there for several centuries. And then, you've got whatever happens in like the 40s, and especially the post World War II period. You've got West Bank and Gaza, effectively, you know, separating as these two regions of non-Israeli government, right? Like, how does that work? Like, you know, I know when Jordan rules the West Bank, when the East Bank rules the West Bank, or the East Bank includes the West Bank, right? Like, it's Jordanian, and that operates under Jordanian rules, right? Hashemite dynasty, you know, etc. How does it work now? Is it the authority, and how does the authority work in the land?
It's a big question actually, but really, do you know, Malfono, history is so big. Types of Jewish from the word, what happened to them after the 70s, where they where how they lived, with whom they mixed, with whom would they return back. Like if you go to Israel nowadays, you could see Eritreans with the crosses on their, like, tattoo, cross tattoo on their forehead, but they're Jewish in citizenship. They're mixed. You got the point?
Yeah.
The Islam, they do the same. This is politics. As a religion, Jewish religion, they don't mix people. They like to stay with the ethnicity of Judaism, Jewish people. But they accept, but not like Islam. Islam, when they came to the Middle East, they try to spread by power, and they try to mix everyone to be under Islam, which is totally different. Now, Israel state, they're trying to do that. They try to gather all the Jewish from all types, from all nations. They're mixed or no, come just to Israel, join. We kick the Palestinians out, we kill them, and then you accept. I saw many videos um, that the Jewish people, they don't agree to come to Israel because they see the situation, they're killing, how they're not just with the how they rule, the authority they're using it for killing, for fulfilling themselves as the ego of Israel. I don't know what to say. There's many things to say, but it's not fair. What's going on is not fair. Even we talk historically, or we talk about religion, like people, they're killed. Many people, if you see them, how they shake the kids, how the Israeli government using the authority to kill people, to kick them out from their homes. Kids are undergrounds. I liked how many Muslims and Christians and also Jewish, they against this. They don't support Israel for that. There we have martyrs, Christian martyrs there, like they were killed from like Israel as like the army. We had last week 18 people like were just killed as Christians, and then one of the churches there in Gaza, they gathered all the kids, all the ages, and they did one baptism for all of them because they will die. They don't want their kids, their children to die without baptism. This is what's going on. They're using the authority, they're using history, religion for themselves in a greedy way that I don't see anyone. And the West is helping that. The West, especially USA, the president, before he became president, he said that we created Israel for our beneficial politics, which we could see it. Like they agree to defense. Okay, like you want Israel to defend themselves? Even like, let's say your mom, like somebody is having a knife and catching your mom and telling her, I will kill her. I killed your cousin, and if you come again, I will kill her. Okay, now do you go just kill her and kill her and kill him? Because the same Hamas did. They use people as shields. We kill innocent people. Why? Why is all this evil? It's important to say the truth. I know as Palestinian now, if I'm saying this, and it's publicly, which we were scared to say that in Palestine, because they will take us and put us in a jail, and maybe my family will not know where I am in 6 months. We were scared to walk in the streets in Palestinian areas when a soldier just a female soldier, comes in and say, "Mamnu التجول, go home, روح بيتك, go your home, no, mamnu, you can't walk in the streets." If they see anyone, they grab them. I think the situation, what Hamas did, which I'm not defending Hamas, but as I'm a religion priest, I speak spiritually, but Israel themselves created that. We're now, maybe if I go West Bank, visit my family now, which I have so many, which we just like received many information that rockets came close to my aunt, the other one, like all the families we receive, even the West Bank, not just Gaza. No one, like if we killed, no one cares. The same as our church. Many people, they can killed us to have the Middle East. Who knows about Syriac Aramaic people now? Like minorities. The same is happening now. It's like just cleaning up the area, and what were planned is like just happened. What's happening now, dear? I just heard it long time ago when I was kid, like a toddler playing in the street. I heard that this is what's happening. They will clear Gaza, and the people of Gaza who remains, they will send them to Egypt, and the West Bank will be with Jerusalem, with Jordan, with the East Bank, and then Israel will being bigger, and they will rule the authority there. There is so much evil there. There is mix of history. Even some Muslims now will be offended from my talk, but they know I love my friends. But I need to say history.
I think we're going to offend everybody, to be honest. You know,
yeah,
like, but I'm very good at that. I'm good. Yeah, I half of my, I think, good, maybe half. I don't know. I haven't taken the official poll yet, but a large number of my viewers are Arab Muslims, and a good chunk, maybe a quarter or more, are Jewish, or people who speak Hebrew. They're interested in Hebrew. A lot of them are from Israel, and they're constantly contributing in the comment section. So it's like, we're here to say we love you, plural, lachum. We love all of you, but like, like we have, yeah, we do, anu, right? Anu havim, but we at the same time, like, this is not part of the conversation. The local Christian community, the local indigenous Christian community, and that's really kind of what I want to get across here is, not necessarily a Western Christian's approach to the region, right? Which, look, if you see Israeli, women, children, men, whatever, killed, your heart is going to hurt, right? And like, that's the image you see. And it should hurt, because that's the image and likeness of God. They're like, they're worthy of dignity the same way that the Palestinian person, who the women, children, adults, whatever, who are killed, they're creating the image and likeness of God. And they're worthy of dignity, and this perspective of the indigenous community is just, it's not accounted for.
There's something there that I think Abuna was talking about, and I think we maybe touched on it earlier, but maybe didn't explore, which is this element of or differentiating perhaps between Zionism and Jewish people, and this notion of like fulfilling prophecy, and the impacts that it has on Western Christian society. So I've just since October 7th, since this new war has started, I've heard many Christians in the West kind of project that this is the fulfilling of prophecy in support of one side or another. And it's confusing to hear that. I guess maybe it's less confusing in the Protestant West, but coming from an Orthodox Eastern background, it's confusing to hear that, because Christ is replacing this kind of old law or this old commandment and this old idea of Israel. And I think Abuna had mentioned it at the beginning of the recording that the church is the new Israel, or the church is Israel itself. And so, if you accept Jesus, which I'm assuming our Protestant Western neighbors do, since we're all in the West, then it's difficult to understand this kind of notion, or like kind of holding true to this Old Testament, very narrow viewpoint of supporting Israel as, or Zionism as the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. To at which point I essentially had asked that one of my friends that, if Zionism is destroying churches, if Zionism, or this, the fulfillment of this prophecy means like destruction of churches and like death of Christians, is it worth it? Like, you just support this stuff? At what point do we have to return back to, being the messengers of peace to the whole world, including this region, and this understanding that we are all created, as you noted, that we're all created in the image of God. It's kind of, I think it's a question worth exploring, and why we have this kind of at least dichotomy within Christianity itself, within the Christian conversation.
Seems like we're not careful with language, right? Like, I mean, even in this conversation, trying to pin it down, and I know Shemosha Daniel wanted to be specific or exact or precise, I think you said, with your, approach. But like, when you said Zionism, you used it as an actor, right? But that's not what you mean. You mean you meant prophetic Zionism, or maybe the policies of modern secular Zionism, and here we are, like, in one moment we're talking Israeli, and that could include Arab Israelis, Druzis, people who follow the Druze religion, if you've never heard that before. Or the next minute we're talking about Jews, something that is a religious category, and that doesn't need to be Israeli or not. And then within Israel, there's many different types of Jews, right? And, many of them are in conflict with one another, right? And they're banded together because of the outside forces, and so I think maybe that's why we get reduced to this A versus B presentation in the West, because we have trouble with the nuances, with the specifics that go into the makeup of this region and the conflicts that are there. When it comes to things like Zion, you were going to say something, Daniel?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, going back to the Saudi guy, what he said. If the Middle East is going to be ethnically homogenous, and all of baqayat al-shu'ub, as he said, all the remnants of the peoples have to leave, or don't have, it's like, I don't know how practical it's the worldview is. Like, in Jordan, Circassians and Chechens and Armenians have a very important role in Jordanian society, and they're considered Jordanians. They're considered more Jordanians than the Palestinians in Jordan are,
Yeah.
And I think in Iraq there are, the diversity in Iraq is insane. Lebanon, Syria, I don't know if it's a disqualification. Rather, I think the conversation personally, I don't believe in a two-state solution. I don't think it's a reality. This is just my opinion.
It will not happen.
Right. It won't happen. And I don't think it's reality. I think it's not practical, if we're being honest, if we're not lying to each other. I don't think it's going to happen. So the solution, in Daniel's opinion, that is not genocidal is the annexation of the West Bank and Gaza by Israel and the citizenship given to the people there. And if they want to keep a Jewish state, then they need to change the form of government. It's that simple. I don't see any countries willing to take on all the Palestinians of the West Bank and Gaza as refugees, and that shouldn't happen anyway. And not only that, but I would say this also might be bothersome for some people to hear, but the Palestinians in Jordan, in Syria and Lebanon should all be given that Israeli citizenship too, to go back. Look, Abuna's laughing because he knows it won't happen.
Sorry, Joseph.
No, please, Abuna, go ahead.
No, just this small thing. I was born in Jerusalem. I don't have this.
Yeah.
I can go down now back, but I need visa actually, a permit to move from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. I am priest. I can't drive. I need to walk for like it's 9 kilos only the distance between my home to the monastery in Jerusalem. I need 4 hours going back and forth every day, which is just 15 minutes.
That's crazy.
It's impossible to bring anyone back.
Yeah.
So then like Shamosho, there's a historical math problem, right? Like, what do we do with all these populations that have been displaced for decades, so approaching 100 years? And then so that aside, and say that doesn't happen, right? And say we just like everyone within the borders, between the river and the sea, and then sea to whatever the northern border is, are all inclusive and offer this citizenship. There's a math problem going forward, which is that some populations, basically double every 10 or so years, or some number like that. And then, another set of population within these borders don't double for many, many, many years because of the reproduction rates. And so there's like this demographic problem just from a simple like math, or like, political standpoint. There's that problem that's taken it very seriously into consideration. And so like, I'm not disagreeing with this maybe reality or proposal that you're suggesting, or your viewpoint, but I don't know how that happens if those growth rates continue to go forward. And perhaps that's a reason for increased. I live in the New York metropolitan area, and so it's beyond being a very diverse area, it's also the largest, to my knowledge at least, it's the largest population of Jewish Americans, and probably Israeli nationals in the U.S. And so I'm familiar with our Jewish friends in this area, and they're not like moving back a whole lot, but even still, the marketing to get them, or the encouragement to get them to move back, cannot keep up with the growth rates of the local population if everyone's included. So at some point, the math doesn't like line up for a Jewish state under democratic law and representation and all of that, if everyone is included. And so I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, is that a third of the world's Jews live in Israel. 2/3 don't. They want to, but they can't annex the West Bank and Gaza, because if they give everyone citizenship, they lose a Jewish state. Exactly what you're saying. And even now, with Israel's current borders not including the West Bank and Gaza, I think 20 to 30% of Israel are Arabs. And that's too much for them because the growth rate of the Arabs is so high, right? They're going to outnumber. So they can't keep a Jewish state while preserving a democracy. It's not going, eventually, it's not going to work. They're going to need to make it where the majority of the people doesn't matter. It's a Jewish state because it's a monarchy.
I saw something within the last, well, maybe it's been within the last 5 years or so, which is this push from within from within the Israeli borders, so populations living within the borders, to diversify their demographic or their the ethnicity that they claim to be, to kind of split the non-Jewish demographic, basically, so that they can't be in a Arab profile, right? So like us as Syriacs, like we're not going to claim to be Arabs. I mean, I'm not saying that they're within Syriac Orthodoxy that there aren't people of Arab descent or Arab lineage or ethnicity. Certainly we have that, but like Abuna and myself, I don't think that we claim Arab ethnicity, and yet they would qualify us or they would bucket us under Arab. And so within the Israeli borders, I've seen a move for them to diversify the non-Jewish, so Arab population, as to maintain an Israeli majority, basically, because instead of saying 30% or 20%, whatever the numbers are, and that sounds a little high, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked at any statistics recently. But if you start to look at those numbers and you say, well, how can we break it and carve off 1% or 2% here or there, and say, you have 1% Aramaic and whatever else carved off, then that number becomes less. But even still, even by doing that, these are just drops in the bucket. Because in 7 years, or in 10 years rather, the Arab Muslim specifically growth rate is so high that they'll just blow that number out of the water and basically have more children.
Abuna, does the Israeli government count us as Aramaean or Assyrian or something like that?
They don't accept us. Before, in the 80s, 90s, they start giving our people on the identity Assyrians on the identity. Later on, they start putting stars. They don't, but in the system, they're changing the identity. They don't accept, or they count you as Assyrian or as Arabs. Yeah, but now
why
not seen.
Abuna, why not Aramaic? Is this just that we would have some claim to this?
What about the room?
Because of the Old Testament.
Yeah, so this is just
wars between Aram and Israel. They don't like even Assyrians, but at least later, it's politics. It's politics about wars and stuff. But even the room and every Christians here, we are split between Israel and Jordanian identities, some of them, and Palestinians.
But I mean, did Israel give the room the same option, Assyrian or Aramaean or anything?
No, just our people.
I think
others,
most,
they call them Arabs. Even the room nowadays, they call them Arabs, which they ignore that they are, many of them are Syriacs. Even the patriarch of Syria, the Greek Orthodox one, the late one, he said that we are originally Aramaic people, Syriacs. And then we had the faith of the Greeks and became Rum Orthodox. Now,
just so people listening know, when they're referring to Rum or Rum Orthodox, they're referring to, this is the way the Arabic says Roman, and that Roman in the Middle East refers to the Eastern Orthodox, the Byzantine Roman, so the Greek Orthodox. And even on their website, the Patriarchate of Antioch is a Greek Yauni, right? It's the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch. So if you hear us say Rum, we're referring to the Eastern Orthodox or the Greek Orthodox presence in the Middle East.
Yeah. One another definition, you hear us like saying Arabic, In Aramaic, there's two definitions. There is the people of the desert, and there is the people they spoke Arabic. And Arabic is one part of like Aramaic. Now the thing is that when the Arabs, like Islams, they came to the Middle East centuries ago, everyone was living in the desert called Araboyo. They changed the word to Araboyo, and like they sent many kingdoms like for Aramaic people, and because they live in the desert, they called Araboye, and then they call them Araboy. Like let's say Tadmur, Palmyra, let's say Petra.
Anbat, yeah.
Yeah, they were like Aramaic or Ambat, okay, and then they called them, they were Arab. We're ethnicity, they are not Arabs. They're another people, but they later they make them believe in Islam or no, and then they make them Muslims are Arabs. Now this happens the same in Israel nowadays. We have Christians in Israel and we have Christians in Palestine. The Israeli government, they with help of some people, which as a church we don't agree, they created some movements. Like there's the Aramaic movement, which there's many of Maronites, Syriacs, Greek Catholics. They're there, which is good to have your like private special movement. But later on, many of them they became Israelite citizens and they start volunteering in the army of Israel. And then those people, one day maybe will send them to Palestine and kill the other Christians. And now what happens? They make them change identity, even they are not Jewish or Israelis, and then later they will be killed Palestinians from them, not as a Jewish, but as politics. I know many now. Maybe they will hear me back home, and they will say, "Abuna, you live in Canada. Now you're in the West. You're safe, and we're now will have the consequences back home. They will hate us. They will." They will persecute us because you're saying that. If I come back now to visit Palestine or Israel, maybe I have consequences from both sides. So I'm not saying because I'm just saying because I'm in Canada. No, I want that to be clarified because I know we're scared to say the truth. And even back home, I was saying that historically, faithfully to the people and with respect, Jewish or Muslims. But I like another thing to say. There is A, B, C areas in the land of Holy Land. Okay, those areas. The A is for Israel, B for Palestine, not as P or I. It's like just areas, and there is a C areas. Now it's full with settlements, like many Israeli people. They live there. They took it even. They tried to destroy many houses. But this C area is created for A and B people. They meet there. That the Israeli then they can go visit B area, or B they can visit A area until they have permission. But the C area, there's still um, um, there's still a chance that people they wake up again for their humanity, for their faith, to start saying no. I like many Jewish people from many nationalities. They stand. We don't agree what Israel is doing. But they're like for 15 years, Gaza or as West Bank, long time ago, the government, they are taking so much gas, water, everything from our areas and give us the bad areas and taking the good areas. And then they sell us back what they have. What you heard now in the news, it's just something like it's a bomb just exploded, but it was long time there. This will come back and forth all the time. If no one stops this will continue. Now in Gaza, later in West Bank, other times with other areas. If you really love the truth, which I believe many people from both religions, they love truth. They want to know truth. Maybe you're not, the truth is not clear for you with Jesus, but you at least you search for goodness. if you want that, you need to stand. This is the time to stand and say the truth. Uh, uh, it's hard, dear. It's hard, but we can do it. Now people they have a ruined image about God. Image ruined, that God is allowing Islam to kill. God is allowing Israelis to kill back forth, defending themselves. This is not what planned for us. The image of God is to care, to have free will, not to kill, but to have the free will, which is many people, they went away from God because of this. God is not what's happening. God is fair. Life and what's happening is unfair. What's going on, which I like to conclude with this myself, and I can't talk anything else, that what's going on from, let's say, 107 years, when the Balfour Promise happened, and then England helped the Israelis to come back to the land and give them the place of other people. The theology of the West as Christians, as Anglican theology, they start Christians adopting the verses which took from St. Paul, that which we don't agree. It's just Protestant movement that's supporting this. As Orthodox, even Catholics, they don't support this. What happened there, that St. Paul, he wished that the people, his own people, when he was preaching other nations, that my people will know what I knew about Jesus before his coming. And then they linked those verses to the situation that if the Jewish people became Christians back, okay, then Jesus will come for the second coming, which we don't agree. This is a false interpretation for the Bible. He was wishing, he was asking, he wants that to happen for sure, and we want that. For that, if the Jewish people became Christians, that will not bring Jesus. Jesus will come when he decides. We can't do this until Jesus come. We have all the Jewish Christians, which I wish, and there's a big movement.
Free.
we wish that. We wish everyone to know Jesus, because Jesus is the only solution for peace. But we pray for this. I know many Jewish people, Muslims, that became Christians. And I will say this last thing. I give the microphone to you guys. Sorry, I talked so much, but I'm talking from.
That's why we invited you, Abuna, just to be sure.
If you preach in Israel, they will put you in jail. If you preach in Arab areas, they put you in jail too. What we used to do that to mix the Islam. They go to Israel, and Israel. The Israeli, they go to the sea areas or by hidden way, which if it's democracy for both, they want two states, they must open it, not to put us in jail. And I saw many movements, even Protestant movements, even Catholics, there's Orthodox ones too, that many people, Jewish people, they become Christians. You can see this on YouTube now. One day they went to the second channel, which is the formal channel of Israel, which is not allowed to preach. They went out on that show, and they start preaching. And there is many stories you can search and dig how many Jewish people they became Christians. This is the solution only, dear. I know we need to preach till death. I'm not scared to say. We must not be scared, because this life is temporary, and we are looking to be with Jesus anytime, now or later. I wish everyone hears me to see my love to every one of you. I know you or I don't know you. I think all of us here would like you to know what we had known, the real history, the Christ himself, salvation, how God loves us, not what's going around. We're looking for human rights, but all the human rights were built before on Christians' values and faith. I ask the Lord to open our eyes more and more, that could help peace, and could spread peace and spread Jesus, and everyone knows the truth, and reach to the real truth, because this is the only way to reach peace. I don't see another solution.
And what Abuna just was talking about, towards the middle, at least, was this like Western idea of supporting Israel or supporting really political Zionism, to have Jewish people from all over return back to Israel. But what they conveniently like don't include in news and Western like media and propaganda and whatever is it's only to fulfill this prophecy that all of the people that assemble in the modern state of Israel need to convert in mass to Christianity in order to bring on the second coming. And so there's this end time prophecy that they're trying to manifest basically themselves to usher in the end times. I don't know. That's kind of, I suppose, why the ultra Orthodox Jewish rabbis and the ultra Orthodox don't support the political state. Abuna, I want to go back to something that we had spoken about a few minutes ago about this like Arab identity amongst the Christians. And hopefully, since Shamosho Daniel has a degree in history, could maybe chime in on this a bit. But we have this kind of like, it's interesting to me. Like, I've never been back there, and my family's never been back there. But I have. I'm talking like family in the U.S. that's never been back there. But I have cousins who are from different churches, not just the Syriac Orthodox Church, and they somehow have this Arab identity or this national identity of an Arab country over their Christian identity, or it supplanted their Christian identity. And so for them, this is a national movement that feeds into Melfono Mike's AB kind of story, right? That we're trying to clarify here, that it's not really a kind of an AB thing, hopefully. And they're supplanting their Christian identity with this national identity. And I don't know, Shamosho Daniel, like, where did all of this come from? Do we have let's take the Syriacs to the side, because hopefully the Syriacs have a little bit more of an ethnic identity here and not claiming to be Arab, although we have many who do. But in terms of like the Rum and others, Catholics and all of their various denominations in the Middle East, where did this Arabization come from? And how are we at the point now where they're willing to basically, in their church congregations, wave this flag of one nation or another, and not, basically claiming to be of the same, of people who have other religious backgrounds. I don't know if you have any comment there.
The end of the Ottoman Empire, there was a very strong Arab nationalist movement. They wanted, a state from Aleppo to Aden, they used to say, under the Hashemites. And this was the promise given from the British to the Hashemites. And there, a lot of the Arab nationalist movements were headed by Christians. Michel Aflaq and the Ba'athists and the SSNP, what is it, like this, the National Socialist Party in Syria. So, and then when Zionism was happening, in order to kind of fight that, people flocked to the Arab nationalist cause, even if they weren't Arabs, and they knew that, like, originally. So, for example, Lebanon wasn't incorporated into Syria. Why? Because the Lebanese were like, we're not Arabs. We don't want to be part of that. The Maronites did. So, and before, during, like, near the end of the Ottoman days, the local urban Muslims, whenever the Bedouin would raid, they'd be like, these Arabs are, they'd go to the Ottoman governor and say, these Arabs are annoying us, keep the Arabs away. The Muslims would say that, the urban Muslims, because at the time people were still aware of, like, okay, these are different ethnic groups. The Ottoman Empire was multi-ethnic. They didn't need to be Arabs. But when the Ottoman Empire fell and this kind of national ethnic vacuum opened up, and there's this new thing called nation states. A nation and a state are not the same. There is the Aramaean nation. There is the Kurdish nation. There is the Arab nation. These are nations. The Cherokee nation, and these are different nations. But now we have nation states because there's new national identities. They're trying to convince the people, like, to buy in. Like a person from Hasaka and a person from Mosul are truly convinced that they're not the same thing. They're truly convinced because of the propaganda of the states that you are not the same. But what is different? The difference is a pen line with ink. That's the difference. There's no real difference. The nation is not different. The state is different, but they're convinced that they're in their new way of thinking, this post World War I way of thinking, that no, my nation state is different than his nation state. Even Israel, the borders of Israel, a lot of people look at it as this romanticist religious institution, and that's why it's such a big deal. And the Jews, that's why it's so important for them. But the borders of what it is, the mandate of Palestine, the borders of that, who decided this? Did the British and the French or the Zionists or Balfour or Rothschild, did they look at a map in the Bible and they said, this is where the map should be? No. It was decided by the British pipeline guys who were trying to figure out how we're going to get oil from Basra and Kuwait to the Mediterranean Sea. That's how they figured out the borders. The borders are not biblical. If you look at the biblical borders of the kingdom of David and Solomon, that's not what it is. The borders don't look like that. The borders don't go that far south all the way to the Red Sea.
You're right, Shamush. If you go to Deuteronomy, you could see that. It's just the area, even now they're having it, it's less.
Yes, it's on both sides of the Jordan River.
Yeah.
And it's not like this. And if you notice, every time is because Israel has like ultra nationalists, right? That are the government is considered moderate compared to some of the ultra nationalists there, and they want both sides of the river because they know what the Bible is saying. So Jordan gets upset whenever that stuff comes up in conversation in the Israeli news. The Jordanian government gets upset about it, and they tell Israel, you guys have to stop doing this. Israel's response every time is, we are standing 100% with the territorial integrity of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. They never say Jordan. They say the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Why? Because the moment there is no more Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, it's up for grabs. As the moment that the king falls, it's done. But the king is their ally. They want him to stay. But as long as he stays, we have no claims to the East Bank. But if there's not a kingdom, why not? You see?
It's, we've alluded to it in a couple different parts of the conversation, but it's like, and this isn't just about the Holy Land. I mean, it applies everywhere, especially in the United States, and people are becoming more and more aware of it with, the last decade, in last 2 decades, maybe, recent events. But there are certain things that go on in running a country. And I think Abuna George talked about kind of the allocation of resources and who's put on what type of land. Is it productive land? Is it unproductive land? Is it useful? Is it not useful? There are things that go into running a state that most people are unaware of, because most people whether they're Americans, whether they're Arabs, whether they're Israelis, Palestinians, it doesn't matter. Most people are just like want to live normal lives. We want decent lives. We want to be happy, and we want to have a good end, and that's not the privilege of any one group to have that. Like, we all want that, but certain things happen that make that livability easier. And a lot of people don't like, or maybe that's not even the case, but a lot of people don't know what happens in the shadows. And some of that operation that's happening in the shadows is coming to light these days. So what do we do, like, for our friends on both sides of the conflict, who maybe they're not invested in any of the actual conflict side. They just want to live a good life. How do we get back to that period when, and maybe, I don't even know. I'm not here to even propose the answer. I'm just more curious. And in fact, maybe that's a question for listeners to comment on, because I have no say in it. Number one, it's not my, I shouldn't have to, my opinion shouldn't matter, is what I'm saying. But I think my opinion on the matter is that our conversation is flawed, and we can't even start talking until we address the flaws in the conversation. That's the only opinion I have. Beyond that, I don't really have a right to speak. But, as I think about it, and, I know people who I like, who would say, that they would say they're Zionists. And what they mean is, I don't have a home in Iraq anymore. My family doesn't live in Atra. They don't live in northern Iraq anymore. We came to Israel, so the person's family came to Israel, and that's their ancestral homeland. Even if they were Assyrians who converted, under Queen Helene back 2,000 years ago, in that period recorded by Josephus, maybe. Does a Cherokee have the right to go back to Georgia? And if so, under what conditions, right? Do Jews from Iran and Iraq and Syria and Egypt and Morocco and Yemen, or let's say even Poland, or Russia or Germany, do they have a right to go back to an ancestral land? And if so, what does that look like? I mean, in the early days before World War II happened, and for me, like, people who subscribe to the channel will know that I spend a lot of time dealing with languages because I'm a big language nerd. But if you study modern Hebrew, you get a ton of words that are Arabic coming into modern Hebrew in the pre-war period. Even now, people will walk around and they'll say, something is sababa, right? Like, it's cool, right? That's not Hebrew. There's a lot of Hebrew slang that's Arabic. And it starts changing. And when neologisms are made, they kind of go more to the rabbinical sources or even Aramaic nowadays. But why not Arabic, right? Like, how do we be good neighbors again? Maybe not we, but how do people? And I guess we're speaking of this, number one, to understand it better. And maybe we hope to understand it better in order to understand how to be better here in the West. And maybe not stick our nose into every situation, but I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and running something is different than someone who just wants to live a normal life. Where's the balance in that?
Absolutely, Manfono. I think, and Joseph and I were having a conversation in the direct messages about the flag. And it goes back to just something, like you're saying, that the bottom line, the end of the day, people just want to live, right? And this has caused so many kind of unnecessary personal investments and emotional investments and ideological investments, like the flag itself. It's a flag of the colors on the flag symbolize the caliphates, the white, black, green, and red. They symbolize the caliphates, and it's the flag of Arab nationalism. And people don't know that. And if we extend the logic, if we follow it from what I was saying earlier about the borders, how they drew the borders, then one is understanding that they are not really that thing. If a European draws a line and says you are this, and there's a mandate called mandate of so and so, so then you identify nationally with this entity that they created. But try to tell our parents, you're not Jordanian, you're not Iraqi, you're not Syrian. No, of course I am. But because they're so wired to believe that, it's such a strong part of their nationalism now, is that the Iraqi is different than the Kuwaiti, is different than the Arab who lives on the Iranian side of the border in Abadan and Muhammara in the Ahwaz area. And then the Arabs in Deir Zor and Jazeera, as if they're different than the ones in Anbar. It's very silly if we're looking at it from the big picture, like we're looking at the big scope. When ISIS was doing their damage, they one of the big things they did is they removed the border, because the territory they had conquered, it was from south of Aleppo all the way to the borders of Baghdad along the Euphrates. So they removed the border between Syria and Iraq, and they made it a big deal, like we finally got rid of the Sykes-Picot border and whatever. And so they would ask the people, it was a trick question. They would like interview the people. They didn't know how to edit videos, apparently. So they would ask the people, like, are you Syrian or Iraqi? And like both answers would have been wrong, but the people didn't know that that's what they were looking for, the answer. So they're like, oh, well, I'm Syrian, because they're so used to saying one or the other one, So, and this is true for Palestinians. This is also true that for Palestinians, there's nothing really that is, except the whole controversy and the fight that has been happening. There's nothing that is kind of keeping you in that nationalist kind of thinking. It's just you share a common struggle. You've created an identity now because of that struggle. But historically, there's nothing special about the borders that the British drew. And Jerusalem was proposed to become an international city many times. So,
yeah, super recently as well. I mean, like within the last 20 years or so, it was proposed or it was at least included in one of the peace deals that was being proposed that never was realized, unfortunately. I still have that question. The question that Malfono asked at the just in the last his last time was that do Jews from all over the world have the right to move back? If I could just answer that, absolutely. Do the people who have been living there for 2,000 years have the right to continue to live there? In my opinion, absolutely. I mean, we're talking as if this little sliver, which is quite small, of land is built up as if it's like Midtown Manhattan, and it's not. There's plenty of space for everyone, but I think both sides, their view of living there or moving back, in their mind, includes removing. It has to be like homogenous, right? They have to remove the occupants or the people who are living in this land that they want to like live on both sides, right? So the Palestinians, if they're being truthful, they don't want Jewish neighbors. And the Israelis, if they're being truthful, they don't want Palestinian neighbors. And so it really doesn't, like, there's no like end to this conflict, right? Or it doesn't appear like there is one, unless the entire paradigm changes. And Shamosho Daniel, it's like in his opinion, the solution, or his solution apparently, would be to incorporate everyone into the larger entity of an Israeli state, but then change it from being a democratic one to a different form of government. But it just, you're not uplifting like millions of people and putting them on other land. I think this like shared nationalism, or this like pan-Arab nationalism, from 100 years ago or so, is kind of coming back to bite, at least in this conflict, is kind of coming back to bite the Palestinians in the wrong part, right? Because this notion of pan-Arab nationalism is like, oh, well, if you're all Arabs, you might as well just go to like an Arab country and get out of here. So there has to be kind of a different approach, it seems, at least to me, which is to say this, this common denominator, that we're all sons of Adam, and that we all kind of we all should be allowed to live with dignity, and we should all be allowed to live in peace, and we should all be allowed to raise children, bring forth children in an environment of peace, and have them live peacefully with people of varying backgrounds, of different religious beliefs, and if they want to claim different nationalities, as Shamosho mentioned earlier, then fine, But and if the solution is all under one state, so be it. But at the very least, should be treated as equals and not second or third or fifth class citizens. And this has been the problem of the struggle that Shamosha just mentioned, has kind of like unified this identity. And it's so interesting for me seeing some of these, at least in the West, the more liberal, recent news, like the college campuses that have kind of erupted, and all of this, this support for one side or another. I think if you remove the flags and you remove like labels, at the end of the day, what do people want? People just want to live in peace. And I think that's not ever, at least to my opinion, has never been the priority in any kind of conversation. It's always been, let's go dig up that pen that Daniel keeps bringing up, right, and redraw something. This famous pen, and people just need to live. I think like they're shared, the parts of their faith that are shared across all three faiths in this region, which is they just basically want to live in peace, and they want to live as images of God. I hope, at least this is my hopeful, but perhaps that's a uniquely Christian perspective on this issue.
Well, hopefully it's not just an Eastern Christian perspective that we've been trying to get across, but a universal one. And I mean, it kind of feels like a strong final thought there, but I don't want to cut anyone off if they have more to say. But if anyone does want to wrap, I think now might be a good time. And if there's anything that we can say to anyone there, whether they're Westerners who are conditioned a certain way and may not know or understand. Maybe we're talking to Western Christians, Protestants in particular, who or have a certain default position. How does our Eastern Christian tradition or experience maybe inform something? Is there something we want to tell them? Are there things we want to say to our Arab cousins or Arab Muslim cousins, or Israeli neighbors? What final message do we have for anybody?
Can I say something?
You most definitely can say something.
Yeah. the solution you give, with my respect, that like we're the image of God, this will not work. I will be honest. We want everyone in the image of God to have a safe and lovely and good life. But with the situation we have on ground, doesn't work. There is the power of the strongest, and there is the end, which does justify the means. There, I do what I want. There is definitions. I have a definition that Israel is my land, and this is what I see. I can't see anything else. If I want to respect others as a humans or as image of God, they are taking it another way, which is the Abrahamic religion, that we all will believe in one religion, that let's live together. They can play on it as they want. I know what you're trying to say here, but I think they're always playing on it in a way to make people convinced what they want through the media. Now, and as a Palestinian, I don't want to go back. They will tell me, no, Abuna, you can't say that. Where's your values? Where's the land? Where's the... No, I tell them, I want. Who doesn't want to live in the place where Jesus was born or to serve there? It was my dream all my life. But the situation, we're living there. If I take my family, I'm killing them in a way or no. I will not take this responsibility. On the maps, there is like there is a pen drawn. We can't change it nowadays. There is strong authorities there, and there's things that it's hard to change because people nowadays have coldness. They're lukewarm, like they don't want to do anything. Even nowadays, look, Russia and Ukraine, no one talks about it. Look, and why? Because now that we have the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. Now, after that, something else will happen. I will have problem in my house. This will have problem there. We're busy in this life. They made the life so busy. They make us so cold that anything comes, it's okay. I have cold feelings. I will talk about it. I will write something. But later, what's the steps? There's no solutions. I know there's many people that love humans for just being a human or the image of God, but we need real steps. I know this is hard to do it. I know there's many struggles. You will face governments, but at the same time, at least you did something in your life. There's something you said to your generation, your family, that really Abuna, Malfono, Shammas, everyone said the truth. And you will be like a person who like symbolize truth in the time where there is no truthless. I pray every day. We as church, we prayed for every conflict in this world, and we need to know that death is coming now or later. It's a truth. I don't like to talk about death. I know many people they don't like, but this is the only, like, it comes for everyone. Think about it. After 50 years, what will be spoken about you or about your country or about the situation you lived? You were really a light. You were really somebody who says the truth, who somebody reflects the thinking of others, not myself. This is my ending thought. I really would like I like to say it. Thank you, Malfono, also for giving us the opportunity. It was my dream. I didn't have the time. I was so busy since I was like I went out for the bed, but because I was sick. Didn't even my channel. I didn't have the time to speak about anything. But thank you. Really, it's a blessing to be with you. I could see the love of God in your hearts. I could see your service. I could see how you want to reach the truth to others. May God bless you, and may the Holy Spirit leads you always, that you bring truth to others. Thank you. Dodi.
Abisagi Abuna. Shamosha. Daniel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abuna, for that. Hopefully, people kind of realize that without Jesus, there's no peace, like Abuna George keeps saying. And that is really the only solution to to all of this. It's you need the Prince of Peace, and there's this guy. He's a very famous rabbi right now. They call him the Yanoka. It's a Syriac word, West Syriac, Yanuko, the word is prodigy. And his dad is Syrian, his mom is Yemeni, or the opposite. Maybe his dad is Yemeni, his mom is Syrian. I don't know, but he's a rabbi right now in Jerusalem, and he has a very large following. He united a lot of the Orthodox sects of Judaism under him, and many of them flock to go listen. And there's someone I'm in contact with. He's an Orthodox Jewish settler in Hebron, Khalil. And he tells me, he said, we don't believe he's the Messiah, but he's one of the greatest teachers that we have on earth right now. And I was reading on the internet, they did an interview with Jews about him, what they thought about him. And one of the Jews, he was when I'm telling you this, the guy's like 35 years old. And the other teachers, the other rabbis, like old and their long beards, white beards, they kiss his hand. They kiss the Anoka's hand. They bow to him and they kiss his hand. Okay. So one of them, they were interviewing him, and they asked him, do you think he's the Messiah? And they said, he's already more legitimate than Jesus of Nazareth, they said. But I thought, why are you thinking about Jesus of Nazareth? Who mentioned him to you? It's like, it's like they are divorced, but they keep thinking about their ex-wife. They're not, right? It's like, who mentioned Jesus of Nazareth? Why are you talking about him? And we can analyze, we can get into a lot of opinions for why, but I think that's telling me something. Maybe they know.
There is a rabbi called Ibn Ishaq. He's a famous rabbi. He passed a few years ago. He's Iraqis. Originally, he speaks Arabic too. He was the famous rabbi there, and has many followers. And recently, before he dies, his son is rabbi too. He saw something that it's not normal for them, that a person appears to him. And he wrote a note, and he told him, after I die 1 year, okay, it's documented like a video. You can find it on YouTube. You show my followers what I had. And he opened the paper, the note, and he said, it's written there in Hebrew, that Jesus is the Christ, Hamashiach, okay? And then they say he's crazy. He became crazy. And from that, they start excluding his teachings, even his name, that not mentioned anymore. And then he started bringing another guy, which I pray that the Lord open his heart and accept him, and then they could see that Jesus is the only way.
Thank you for that. Joseph, any departing thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I keep thinking every time latest breaking news happens on this conflict in this past month is that, it's so sad every time, the initial, the start of this conflict is sad. The response is sad. This is, innocent blood of people, of we always hear everyone talking about women and children, but men too. It's unfortunate because when children are raised in conflict on either side and they only know conflict, it tends to yield more conflict in history. And so this, at least from the Western perspective, like we tend to hear, or it comes in kind of like swings. The beginning of the conflict, there's a population, or one side is victimized, and then it tends to stick with the narrative for the rest of the conflict. And so then, like, at least from the way that I see it, it's like the blood of some people cheaper or less valuable than the blood of other people. I know this is a talking point that gets commonly mentioned from one side, but from a Christian sitting in the comfort of the U.S., right? We hold the blood of the people who died during the attacks on 9/11 very sacredly. But as Christians, shouldn't we hold the blood of innocent all over the world as much like as sacred as those people, or as the people who were attacked and died on October 7th, or the people who were bombed last night and died? The whole neighborhood or a whole apartment building was bombed. Shouldn't we pray for the people in Ethiopia, or the people in Sudan, or in Yemen, or wherever else just as much? Or shouldn't we value their lives rather just as much? And yet, like, the narrative that we see is that some people are more important, or deserve more TV time or more social media time than others. I saw a very interesting stat yesterday about Twitter posts, and then Twitter, those posts or those tweets being viewed. I don't know what they're called anymore. If Twitter's called X, I don't know what the actual like tweet is called, but I don't know. So that something on the order of for every one tweet, and this isn't exact, but I'm trying to like reduce it to the lowest common denominator. For every one tweet about Israel, there was something on the order of like 10 shares, or it was like a 10x like share or view or something like that. But for every one post about Palestine, or the Palestinian side, and the suffering on that side, there was only like a 1.7x share or view. So we're talking about a huge difference in the amount of value and the amount of appreciation for life, or the value or sanctity of life of one people or another. And it's unfortunate that that we've kind of arrived to this point. And it seems like the only solution, of course, as a Christian, it's easy to defer to this. But as Shamosha said and Abuna said, the solution is Christ. The solution is faith. We probably need some to take some matters into our hands as well, to bring that about in terms of like peace rather, and not prophecy. But it's sad to see innocent people dying, children dying on either side, and it needs to stop. We've been seeing it for over 10 years now in Syria, and we have to, it just has to stop. And so kind of final thought is more of a prayer for people all over the world to just accept Christ and accept peace and love. And we have to pray for them.
Well, thank you all for that. I think mine's a little simpler. I want us to have more nuanced conversations about things. If you're a listener, I hope you can appreciate this different perspective, one you probably don't hear in the mainstream narratives. Break the narratives, talk to people who are, on the margins, or they're from a different community than you hear about. Make a friend from the other side. And, it's these little efforts that'll chip away at, this false dichotomy that we all seem to have to bend to. So thank you all very much. Taudi Ghalabe, Taudi Sagi. Happy to see all you guys. And great collection of folks too, by the way. Lastly, Abuna, where can people find you online? Is there anywhere that people can get a hold of you if they want?
Thank you for this. Yeah, I have a small channel called Ask Abuna. I'm open always for many questions. It's for youth and children, but it's open for everyone. It's multi-languages too. We try to serve the Lord and everyone as much as we can. It's called Ask Abuna. It's on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you have my phone number there too.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Abuna. Shemosho, Daniel, how do we find you?
So I have a little channel too now. It's called the Lion's Den, because I'm Daniel, right?
The modern Daniel.
What they don't know is that Daniel's the lion. Like, that's kind of what they have to figure out after watching your channel for a while.
They will find out the story of the Bible.
The Bible's wrong.
So keep looking out for episodes. We're gonna put a few out very soon.
All right. And Shemosho Joseph, we hope to see you back on all of our channels coming up, and maybe we'll be seeing something from you in the future.
Great, thanks for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you guys, everyone. Go ahead and pray for us, pray for everyone in the Holy Land, and know that if you're directly involved in this one way or another, that you're loved, and we care about you, and we wish you all safety, peace, and a real happy life. So pray for us as well. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you. God bless.